It's so exciting to be here with all of you. I have been and was at first and continue to be so impressed with Dartmouth alums. Tonight, though, I thought I'd give you a little bit about my background and then talk to you about why I am so privileged and excited about being the 17th in the Wheelock succession. You know, my background is really very typical, just the typical Korean-American kid from Iowa. Dentist father, philosopher mother, it's the story you hear every day. But growing up in Iowa, I think in many ways, it certainly prepared me for the winters of New Hampshire. But also, I had a very practical dentist father. And here's my mother, philosopher, giving us books by Martin Luther King and filling our heads with all these big ideas. But my father was very, very practical. And so for most of my life, I've tried to do those two things. Have really high aspirations, think big, think about issues like social justice and what's fair and what's right. Should people starve to death? Should people have health care? But then, in a very practical sense, we tried to make it happen. At Partners in Health, we had a lot of help from a lot of people. In fact, Sarah Lyons is here tonight, class of '86. Her uncle, Tom White, helped us to make a lot of things happen. But what we were able to do is things like lift the death sentence from poor people in the world who suffer from drug-resistant TB, tuberculosis. We did that. We didn't do everything, but we certainly did that. We showed the world that the 30 million people, the 30 million poor people living in the world with HIV could be treated and could lead full, happy, productive lives. But at that point where we had had several victories and we're looking at the next step, and this was really last year, at that very moment where I was trying to think of what to do next, I had no inkling about being a president of a college or university. And in fact, the first time I met John Isaacson, by the way, John Isaacson is the best interviewer I have ever met in my life. After 3 hours, I was certain that he knew much more about me than my wife did. And John ended the conversation by saying, you're a really interesting guy. I don't know if you're right for Dartmouth, but you're a really interesting guy. And then I walked away from that meeting and I went home and I asked my wife, I said, so I had this first interview. Should I keep going? Should I go to the next stage? And she kept saying, well, you'll never get it, so go ahead, go to the next stage. And then I started studying Dartmouth. I read everything I could. I read everything from the Dartmouth Review to old issues of the Daily Dartmouth. I read Edward Latham's book, and I dug in to try to find out why Dartmouth alums are so crazy about Dartmouth. It didn't make any sense to me at first. And here's what I've come up with. I think that Dartmouth is the best undergraduate experience to be had on the face of the earth. So what do I have to do other than just not screwing it up? This is a great situation. It's not broken. There's nothing to fix. So what do I have to do as the new president? Well, here's one thing. I thought I was pretty up on higher education and what different institutions offer, but I didn't know this about Dartmouth. I think the first thing I have to do is make sure everyone knows what a great experience a Dartmouth education is. People have to know about it. We have to make sure they know about it. Secondly, no matter how good we are, we can improve. In 2004, Booz Allen Hamilton named Dartmouth one of the great enduring institutions in the world. And among academic institutions, they only named two, Dartmouth and Oxford. And they went back to the early 1800s when Daniel Webster defended Dartmouth and, of course, said that great line, "It is, sir, but a small college, yet there are those who love it." And what they wrote, though, was that Dartmouth has maintained its market share and its great brand despite rapidly changing environments. So they emphasized that Dartmouth has been great at changing with the times. So no matter how great an institution is, it can always be improved. I have been a student of quality improvement in the healthcare arena, and I think we can do things to make the experience at Dartmouth even more astounding. Now, Dartmouth has already had an amazing impact in the world. It turns out that the biggest, most powerful governments in the world, when they get in trouble financially, they turn to Dartmouth grads, Hank Paulson and Tim Geithner. So there's no question that Dartmouth grads are already having a huge impact in the world. But what would it take to convince all of you and to convince everyone in the world that the best investment you could make in changing the world would be to invest in Dartmouth? Now, I believe that. That's why I stopped literally throwing my own body at problems like HIV and TB and other pandemic flu, these terrible global health problems. And that's why I chose to become president of Dartmouth College. Because I believe that the best way to change the world is to do just what John Sloan Dickey said. The world's troubles are your troubles, but there's never been a problem that couldn't be fixed by better human beings. After throwing my own body at a problem for a long time, I thought the opportunity to go to a place as fantastic as Dartmouth and to have an impact on 1,000 new young people a year would be the most important thing I could do to try to make the world a better place. Now, thank you. I'm very much aware of the sacred trust that's been handed to me. It's a pretty awesome thought to be the 17th in line of something that was started in 1769. But I pledge to you today that starting next Wednesday, that I am going to put everything I have into convincing every single Dartmouth student that there is nothing that they can't do. There is not a problem in the world that they can't take on and solve or make better. I have to convince them that they can do that. But then we have to look at ourselves. We have to look at what we're doing at Dartmouth, because once you get that desire, the inspired student, then you've got to give them the tools. So the second thing I'll pledge to you is that we are going to do everything we can. Look at every other institution that might be doing something well, making sure that everything that we're doing that's really the best in the world gets spread throughout the institution. We are going to do everything we can to arm our students to go out and take on the world, to make the world's troubles their troubles, and solve those problems in a way that the world has never seen before. Thank you very much. I'd love to take your questions.